poems,
comedy,
writing,
interviews.
ELFM, it's radio, but so much more.
Good evening and welcome to Chapel FM Arts Centre. If you're tuned into East Leeds FM, and this is our home here at Chapel FM in our lovely radio theatre tonight. And thank you, it's lovely to see everybody tonight, and it's great to see so many people who haven't been to the chapel before in here. Not to see this Peter, but I think to see this Peter, our first guest, Peter Mitchell. Give him a round of applause, please. So first of all, before we get cracking, Peter, I'll just say that we've got an evening of, it's kind of a history theme tonight. Although Peter obviously might not have been taking photographs as a historian, more as an artist, perhaps we can talk about that. But we've got later on Sam Armitage is going to be talking to two fantastic young YouTubers, young people who are passionate about history and who make history in innovative ways for audiences, really beyond this room, certainly audiences of all kinds, but on YouTube. So we're going to be talking to them later on. It's going to be a fascinating evening of history. But first of all, Peter, it's lovely to have you here again.
Nice. To see you, nice.
To see you, nice. First of all, we're going to be looking at some photographs and you don't know what these photographs are, as I understand.
Well, I took the photographs, but maybe I'd not seen them for several years or something like that. And also, they might not have ever been printed or something. So this is just my agent flicking through and saying, oh, I'll put that one in. Oh, that'll have them guessing, etc., etc. So
it'll be interesting to see whether you recognise them. They might not be by you, of course. It might be by somebody else.
Well, I don't know. It's sort of like when I see them, I recognise them. And I think, oh, I can't remember what street that was. And then I think, oh, I hope I can remember where I live. And it just gets worse.
Before we start, I want to ask you a question, which is what was your first camera and when did you get it?
My first camera was a thing called a Yashica, and it was borrowed from an architectural company in Leeds. And nobody ever used it, so one of the guys there said, do you need a camera at all? And I said, well, I'd like to take a few pictures. And I did printmaking at college and graphic design. So I got this thing, and it was rattling about and all the rest of it. And I got burgled, so eventually that went. So then I bought a Rolleiflex, which is one of those gadgets that have got two lenses in them, and that got stolen as well. And this was a sort of an indication then that people got burgled a lot where I lived. And eventually after that I bought something called a Swedish camera, a Hasselblad, and it was just like a box brownie. In principle it's identical to a box brownie. It's just bigger and heavier and fancier. So, you know, it's the Rolls-Royce of cameras, if that's a good question. And I've had it. It's a 1958 model, and I've used it right up to this time. So,
fantastic. Well, so your photographs are very much associated with Leeds, and you are associated with Leeds as a city at a certain point in time, probably in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. What was your? Do you remember? I'm guessing you're not from Leeds. What was your first sighting?
I feel so guilty.
It's fine. I'm not either. We'll come out. But when you came to Leeds for the first time, what was your first impression of it? Can you remember the time when you first arrived here?
Oh, I can completely. Yes, it was just like a foreign country. And a bizarre city, having been in London all my life. And I came up here in 1972, and it was pouring with rain. The friends of mine were over in Headingley, and they were squatting there. And went into town, it was pouring with rain, and I think it was this Albion Street, something like that, which it turned out to be the estate agent's place. And estate agents were these little little houses and little shops with gold lettering saying what they were, their name. And I went in and sort of said, what about flats and things? What are they like here? And he said, well, depends what you want. I said, well, I'll just have anything, really. He said, well, it's funny you should say that. I've got a flat, and it's in a good place, and it's at the good end of the place. So I went, right, fine. And how much would that be? And he went, well, I have to look that up. Oh, that'll be £2.50 a week. And I thought, well, I'm in Hampstead in London. I was paying a £5 times 4, so that was 25 or so 20 quid a month for one little room. So he said, well, the rates to pay on top of that. How much are the rates? We went, I think there were about 4 shillings, 5 shillings, something like that. Can we see it? So he said, well, I'll see you round there. I'll get on my bike and you can catch me up. So I was in a car then. And it was Spencer Place. And it was just like the house I'd left.
That's where I picked you up from just now, in fact.
Yeah, exactly that. I've been in that place for 40 years now.
Well, it's
in the same flat.
If you came in 72...
Yeah.
That's
50 years. 50 years, sorry.
50 years!
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So, Peter, we're going to see the first of the photographs.
Right.
We don't know what the photograph is. It's been sent by
Oh,
Peter's
trust me,
agent,
trust me.
Rudy. So let's have a look, see what we've got.
Oh, it's Gavin. That's the one that's missing.
Is it?
Well,
Yeah, Peter thinks we've nabbed one of his photographs. I'm trying to
Right.
persuade him. He's not. That's the one. Okay. Tell us about Gavin.
Can we have the lights down a bit? Would it just...
Any chance? Yeah.
You can see it a little better. So that's Francis, and that's his ghost train, and that's on Woodhouse Moor. And that's one of the first pictures I took of him. And he made it himself, of course, and all that's inside it. And the arms come out and stretch the whole length of the ghost train. And they sort of wave a bit like that. It's supposed to be scary. And the lights, eyes move about and all the rest of it.
You're going to get a stiff neck, aren't you? Do you want to move around a bit if you want?
And I photographed every year in exactly the same position of Francis, just standing in front of his ghost train.
Right.
And I photographed him till he died. And I was quite chuffed, in fact, that at his funeral, he had one of these big, enormous funerals where some people came in evening dress and all had bow ties on, and probably about 200 of them, something like that. In Castleford, this was. And I'd been asked already to put on an exhibition of him. Would I do that? And I said, yes, I will. I can bring some pictures of him along. I've got a few. And he said, oh, well, we know that. And halfway through the funeral, it was a humanist funeral. And it was all pop songs, the sort of I did it my way kind of thing and all the rest of it. Quite moving. And my pictures were there. But when I went down along the things, I thought, there's this same picture. And it was on, I don't know what they're called, but they're called the instructions you get that had the songs inside it so you could sing along.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought,
karaoke.
Actually, I've got one of my photographs on this, list of the service. That's what it was. And
so you said when you looked at it, I thought you said Gavin. Did you say Gavin or did you say
that's his
Francis?
name, Gavan, actually. Francis Gavan.
Has he got it looks like he's got headphones on or something.
No, it's just his hair. And of course, he's got the ladder going up at the side. And if you look at the photograph that we have here, that's got ladders are everywhere in my photographs. They're always propping up a ghost train, a fun fair, or a house.
Well, it's an extraordinary photograph. I mean, so that thing was made of metal, presumably. It was
Yes, I mean, his wife I'd said to his wife, I'd like the ghost train. If something happens to it, give us a ring and I'll be there getting my bit. And nothing went by for 2 years and then 3 years. And I photographed it a couple of times for not Radio 2, but the arts programme. It's 9 on the little zapper, but it's 4, is it?
Radio
Programme
4.
4.
Yes, Radio 4.
They were doing a history of photography. And I said, well, what can we do? And we want to see you photographing somebody. So I said, well, I don't know. I used to photograph a ghost train. That's what we'll do. So the TV thing came round and all the stuff went inside it. And we went round and there was Gavin. And he said, oh, I haven't seen you, lad. And he didn't know my name. I know that was his name because of the credits that went in books and on the site. And he said, what are you up to? And I said, we need a picture of you. And the ghost train, where's the ghost train? He said, oh, it's over there. And it had been completely overgrown. It had just was like in the jungle. So he said, if you come back tomorrow, it'll be there. Oh, come on. So he went back the next day.
Fantastic.
And it was like that. But if you looked at it hard, it was all propped up. He'd got it all nailed about and all this sort of thing. And it's an identical picture. Even the weather was the same. You can see a storm coming up in the background. And it started to rain. And so that was it. So we've still got to do something about it. And I did get the first pick of the ghost train. So I've got the thing, but I couldn't. He had real train inside it. And there were cast iron carriages in it. So you couldn't move them. And they had to plug into the electricity and go past things that, the cobwebs on your, and the skeleton that goes moo and doesn't do anything.
Bit disappointing ghost trains.
I'm waiting now to get the exhibition that involves the ghost train. Yeah. So that thing, the face is 9 feet across. And I've got the writing that goes right the way around it.
Goodness knows where you store it. But Peter, we've got to move on to the next one.
Which is 40 feet long. And the galleries, we can't handle 40 feet.
Photograph 2, please, Elliot. We've got it already. Brilliant.
Oh, yes. I can't remember when this guy died. Billy Bremner? Does that ring any bells with anybody?
Billy Bremner,
I don't know him, but I took the picture because it looked kind of like Shakespeare. And I was kind of quite amazed that all along, you can't see them in this shot, there were where people had taken the photograph out of the newspaper and put it in a little frame. And there were nearly all ladies that were putting these little frames down by the side of it as if, they really fancied him.
Billy Bremner, Leeds football, yeah? Yeah. So when did he die? In the 90s? Okay.
Yes,
so
something like that.
Yeah.
But, I kept asking people, what does it mean? He would break himself in two. And does anybody know that here?
What does it mean?
Do you know it? Can you say
he would
it?
break himself in two?
He was.
Got it.
No, I was in this pub and somebody was overhearing me and he said, I'll tell you why it's called that. Sorry, I drop into Yorkshire sometimes. For the sake of Leeds United, he would break himself in two.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry.
God bless her.
It's a continuum. I'm being very stupid. I wasn't looking at the top 2 lines. Because he would break himself in two. I was just seeing those two.
For the sake of Leeds, he's the leader of the pack. Oh, he would break himself. That's right. I mean, people got frightened of him, that he was prepared to break his own legs as well as the goalie's legs or something like that.
Right.
God bless our Billy.
So where was this? Where was that?
That was up for a day, I think. I just happened to be driving past.
Was it like down by the town hall or something down there?
These are you can just
yeah.
And you can just see the fencing going up behind. And there's this picture of him sort of right in the middle. So it's like a perfect picture. Mm-hmm. And just to end the story, I had a show for the Henry Moore Centre. And it was in Henry Moore's favourite church, over Methley Way, is it? Very famous church, because he was always going in there and sketching bits of the dead people, not the dead people, the statues of them. And he asked if we could have some pictures to go into it. And I did these pictures which were kind of like prayers. I felt it should be religious anyway. So this one went up, and 5 others. And they're big. They're almost that size that went up on the walls of the church. And again, it was quite moving because they devoted a service to this. And I actually went because I'm kind of a bit iffy about churches. Like, I don't know whether to really jump in or still stick out on the outside. But it was really, really sort of moving. Anyway. Let's move on to number 3. The ghost train. No, it's not the ghost train. Oh, it's a scarecrow, isn't it?
It is.
A dying breed. So this one's on the A64, just leaving it to go to Tadcaster. And I was in fact going on out to a place that my partner actually bought, which was a cottage out at a place called Sinnington, which is near Pickering. So we used to go out there, and I thought, well, I'm a townsman. I do things that are on the floor, rubbish, things that are being collapsed, things that have just burnt down. And I've always, as a kid, always loved scarecrows. Not the Wurzel Gummidge sort, but the sort of bit more horrific somehow. So I've not done this. I've not made it or anything, all these things. And of course, the agent took one look at this. He said, it's a fantastic book, Pete. It's a fantastic book. And I said, we can't do anything like that. It's just for kids. I just was doing it because I couldn't do the other stuff. And in fact, this has been quite successful. So in the book itself, which is called Something Means Everything to Somebody, that's it. And I'd done all the squiggly. So it was child's writing on the cover and stuff like that. So on one side, I would have the scarecrow. And on the other side, I would have one of my precious little things. So the house I live in is big. It's 3 stories high, but it's completely filled up with junk. And the junk gets big. There are enormous clocks and all kinds of things. So that's why I can't move. I'm a prisoner of my own crap, really. So,
prisoner of crap.
But it worked very well, so I'd kind of chosen the scarecrow. So he's pointing at something, and the image is over this side. And it was a crate, a big red crate, as big as this, and it had my photographs inside it. But the people come to, I think, like the crate more than the photographs. And particularly, I had a show in France, and the crates, I put, it's 3 crates, and I put the crates on the floor, just anywhere, as I had done for various other times. And it was an important place. I was quite pleased to see people changing their babies and this sort of thing sitting on the end of it. And it's bright red, and it's a bit bashed about and such like. And it's like not suitcases. They are suitcases, are they? Those things that you put your clothes into. All these labels over it where it's been before. And these guards came out and said, get off that. They were French people, and they were very rude. You can't, get off the artwork, get off the artwork. And I said, it's not artwork. And they said, if the artist was here, he'd go crazy, because I can speak a bit of French. And I said, well, I am the artist here. And I had to go all the way to the head that, there were dozens of these people. It was a massive exhibition. And I had to write something, giving my permission for people to sit on it. And I thought that was brilliant.
Number 4, please, Elliot.
That's a I live just up the road from this. So if any of you like grime, is it now? Is it? You could only get these records from Jamaica, actually. So this is all that Sir Yank ever sold, really. And he wouldn't let me take his picture. And it's gone now, of course, like everything else that I take pictures of have gone. So the Sir Yank heavy disco, or Sir Yank's records, but it's got the heavy disco on the side, would come out for the carnival, of course. Now, the first carnivals I met were really raucous, because people would come all over the islands, and it would start 2 weeks before the carnival itself and go on for 2 weeks after. And it was a kind of secret that all the dressing up all happened in complete privacy, so that it wasn't a king and queen and that sort of thing that was voted the night before. And you had the troops, you had these very tiny kids that were pulling along these giant scaffolding things with wheels on. And I think it used, if I remember rightly, the carnival used to go to the steps of the town hall. And I thought, how can these little kids get that far, get to the bottom of the road? So eventually they changed it, and it was all put on lorries and that sort of thing. And they just walk around the block now. Well, it's quite a big block, but the other great thing was it was so loud, that thing, that all the windows all moved around. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, it was when the police didn't tell them to get out the way and pack it in and all the rest of it. And I used to get these letters from N-Power saying, do not give, during the carnival, do not give your electricity to the people that come and just ask if they can plug into your place or something like that, because it could be dangerous. And I'm sort of sitting there going, I get you what you mean, I get what you mean.
So when was this taken, do you reckon, then, Peter?
That was taken in probably 74.
74, right.
Maybe 73, one of the early ones.
And you think the whole building has gone there, do you?
No, because this part of Spencer Place was pretty smart when it was built in 1903. Yeah. So it would be the mews where they kept the horse, or if he was a tradesman, chimney sweep or something like that, maybe he kept a barrow and things of that sort. So there were several of these all the way down, from about here, which is in the middle of the road on the other side. You come to about number 54, I think, like that, which is actually a listed building. But the backs were always wrecks. Mostly they repaired cars and things in them. So,
fantastic. Well,
but it's a lovely picture. When it's printed and seen in all its glory, I never get tired of them, really.
Well, this is a kind of history that, I don't know, it'd be interesting to ask our YouTubers whether you celebrate this kind of history. The more conventional types, perhaps, but I guess it's all history. It's great to have the photograph.
Yeah.
If it has gone, and that's...
And it's great to know that nobody else can go and do it either.
Won't do it better anyway. So let's have the final number 5 photograph, please.
This has got a history to it. So this picture might appear in The Guardian very soon, because they've invited me to demonstrate the best photograph that I ever took. And that means it should, and this is what the picture person said, it's got to have a story with it, we want it, and make sure it's got some people in it. So I put this in just to be rude about it. But something very weird happened. So the title for that is called Two Anonymous Ladies. And I'm taking this photograph, and they're saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Shouting it because they've just got there. And I said, I'm just taking a photograph. What are you taking a photograph of that for? And I said, well, it's a cinema. He said, we know it's a cinema, but it's not a cinema anymore. So why are you doing it? And I just said, because I love it. Oh, right. And off they went. And this is another early one. This is Middleton. And this is the Tivoli. And of course, it's bingo now. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, Rudy, my agent, gets a phone. And it's Doreen. No, it's not Doreen. It's Gloria. And Gloria just makes you feel good, doesn't it? Anyway, she said, I just wanted to tell you, do you know the photographer called Pete Mitchell? And he said, yeah, I'm his agent. She said, well, those two ladies, they're not anonymous at all. They were actually quite famous. I went, oh, Christ. And she said, we've always known who we are and what we did and all the rest of it. So I apologized, and he sent a letter apologizing that I didn't get their names or something like that. So he sent a letter, and he sent another book of mine, an early book of mine. And straight away he got another phone back, and it was Gloria again. And she said, I've just looked through it, and I've just come across a picture of where the two ladies work. And I said, what do you mean where they work? She said, you photographed them before. And of course, I wouldn't recognize them or know, because they're quite a distance away. And all my pictures, if you see the one at the front, is always a long distance away. So we wrapped up, and lo and behold, there it was. So does anybody know Marshall's Flax Mill on Marshall Street? Oh, you should go there. It's the best, absolutely the best building in Leeds. The Egyptian one, yes. It's a copy of an Egyptian one. And it's massive. When you go inside, it's the size of a football pitch. And it's falling apart now. It's crumbling. And nobody knows what to do with it. It was, in their day, it was Kay's mail order warehouse. And the photograph I took was the night shift clocking off. And it was a group of them. And one is a bit like the Bangles. She's sort of standing there going like that, as if, and she's calling it, come on, get your picture taken, get your picture taken. So that's such a nice ending. So it's Doreen on the left, and it's...
Gloria.
No, Gloria. Was the grown-up daughter.
Sorry.
No, it's Sonia on the other side. And the other nice thing was, you can see this gap here. It was where they lived. They lived actually opposite, looking at that word. Because these were all back-to-backs at the time, and they'd been demolished at some point in the 60s. So I thought this is such a lovely ending.
Well, that maybe is an ending to this as well. So well, thank you very much, Peter.
Right.
Thanks for talking about these 5 photographs, which you didn't know which ones were going to come up. So
No, I didn't.
and look for the Guardian.
They were
maybe
the good ones, mind you.
Look for the Guardian in a few weeks' time. Maybe we'll see this photograph
yeah.
printed up. Can we a round of applause, please, for Peter?
Back then it almost felt heaven sent. With slow dancing models in a child's ornament, kept spinning our heads full of stars. Didn't know what we had, but we knew it was ours. With one hand on the small of her back.
At home, work, or in the car, East Leeds FM sounds great anywhere.
And now I'm going to hand over to the Venerable Sam Armitage here. He's going to be talking to these fabulous people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Peter. Yes, you are right. We have moved on from Peter Mitchell. That was a really interesting conversation the two Peters had together. And now we're moving on to some local history YouTubers. I am here. To my right is Darren from AdventureMe, and opposite me is Catherine from Yorkshires Hidden History. So what's going to happen is we're going to see a few YouTube videos from both of these amazing people, and then we're going to have a bit of time to ask them some questions about what they do, their work, and why they do it really. So I think first up we're going to go with Catherine. Yes, on the screen here. Do you know what videos are actually gonna come up? Or
yeah,
not?
I mean, it's not annoying. This is one of my older ones. So when I was just an embryo, so it's not up to my usual standard. It's probably quite cringy for me to watch right now. But I think if some people still find value in it, then it's all right.
Let's give it a watch.
This don't look like much, but this is the River Aire. This is the start of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, which is a backbone of northern industry. When this was built, it helped transform Britain into the workshop of the world. Churches, banners, kings and queens, factories and big machines, castles, forts and in-betweens are stories that are told.
By the mid-18th century, the West Riding of Yorkshire was prospering due to their immense wool trade. Leeds alone handled 1/6 of England's trade exports, and whilst they had a lot of trade links to the east, places like York, Hull and the east coast due to the Aire and Calder Navigation Canal, there were limited links to the west, especially to the bustling seaport of Liverpool.
Inspired by the success of the Bridgewater Canal in Manchester, which was the first canal in England, in 1766 a group of businessmen gathered in a pub in Bradford to discuss the creation of the canal. They had three main motivations. One was limestone. Limestone is absolutely essential for building and farming, and there needed to be a simpler, cheaper and easier way of transporting it from the quarries in North Yorkshire down to wherever it needed to be. Two was coal. Lancashire businessmen, and especially the industry in Liverpool, needed more and more coal, and they needed a cheaper supply of it. And if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of coal in Yorkshire. Three is wool. Yorkshire wool traders wanted to expand their business outwards, and so, with all this in mind, they decided to build the canal.
John Longbotham was assigned the task of designing the route, and after plenty of arguments by people on both sides of the Pennines, the route was finally settled. Starting at Leeds, it would wind its way through the textile towns of West Yorkshire, then onto limestone-heavy Skipton and Gargrave, then down into Lancashire through the cotton towns of Burnley and Blackburn, down to the coal fields of Wigan, with a route to Leigh and Tarleton, before finally reaching Liverpool. At the time, it was estimated to cost around £300,000 to build the 127-mile-long canal. When it was finished 46 years later, it had cost nearly £2 million.
Although when the canal started the biggest cargo was limestone, it was soon took over by something else. Coal.
Coal. Always believe in your soul. You've got the power to know you're indestructible. Always believe it, 'cause you are coal. Life that you're bound to return. There's something I could have learned.
By 1860, nearly 2 million tonnes a year were being transported from the collieries in Yorkshire and Lancashire to Liverpool.
So what other things were transported on the canal? Well, there was quite the variety. Slate, wool, grain, machinery, sugar, bricks and even manure, anything that could possibly be used for industry or sold in cities. Finished goods, such as clothes, would often be taken by road or rail, whereas the raw materials would be taken by canal boat. In the early days, the boats would be pulled by horses on the towpath, but by the early 20th century they began to be powered by steam. Each boat could carry around 35 to 50 tonnes, and at the busiest section of the canal, between Wigan and Liverpool, it's estimated that a boat would pass every 5 minutes. A really fantastic place to visit is the famous Bingley Five Rise Locks. It's a staircase made up of 5 levels of locks to allow the canal boats to go up and down the hill. The canal helps us to get a brief glimpse of the main industries in Yorkshire. Starting at Leeds, the wool capital, the canal follows the main textile towns of the West Riding, places like Bradford, Keighley and Bingley. The coalface covered great swathes of Yorkshire, and so some of the biggest mining areas like Sheffield, Wakefield, Castleford and Doncaster were all connected to the waterways. The steel industry, such as the famous Sheffield cutlery makers, were all aided greatly by the chance to export their goods abroad through the Liverpool ports. The limestone quarries of Skipton in the North Yorkshire Dales would provide essential lime for building and fertilising. Now obviously there was a great variety of industry and goods produced in Yorkshire, but this is just a brief guide to some of the main areas. The sheer size of the canal meant that it was the only trans-Pennine canal to successfully compete against the introduction of road and rail, and would still be used industrially well into the 1960s. Now obviously the history of the canal is vast and it's impossible to give a thorough account of it, but I hope that I've given at least a brief and interesting overview of the history of this fantastic feat of British engineering. I hope that I've inspired you to go out and walk along the towpaths, because really the canal has some of the most scenic parts of Yorkshire. I hope you've enjoyed and I hope to see you again soon.
So that was just one video that kind of just encapsulates your channel, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that one's 4 years old, so, I say it's me still in my embryonic form. I actually haven't watched it for a long time, so it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but there's a lot of elements which it doesn't have yet because I hadn't developed it, like my costumes, and I talk a bit too quickly there. So, I think it's still a good video in itself, but it's certainly not what I'm capable of doing now.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, through researching this, I watched a few of your videos, and yeah, you talk about your costumes there. You have developed it a lot. Have we got another video to watch, or are we moving straight to questions now? I think the questions that are for you, Catherine, were pre-recorded by one of the other people that does Next Generation here at Chapel, and that is Jude. So if she's watching, these are questions that you recorded. So it's going to be a bit of a weird interview for you, I'd say, because your interviewer isn't actually here, but I'll pop in with some questions if I have anything to ask. But yeah, I think we'll just take away with the first one.
What sort of audience do you think your content attracts?
That's an interesting one because I don't think I aim to target a specific demographic or audience, because I seem to attract quite a range. I mean, what I find most incredible is the number of international viewers. I've got people from Australia, America, Canada. I'm not sure what value they find in Yorkshire history, but I think a lot of them have family history connections. And I think over my journey, I suppose I've just wanted it to appeal to everyone, to as many people as possible. So, it's not just for a certain age group or people from a certain place. I think quite a lot of different people enjoy watching my videos, so I think I aim to appeal to as wide a target of people.
What drew you to local history specifically?
So, to be honest, I think it was a little bit mercenary, because I've always been just generally interested in history. And then towards the end of college, I realised that no one had a YouTube channel really about Yorkshire history. There was a lot of people doing British history, but I felt, I could corner the market on Yorkshire history. So that was admittedly my main thinking, but it was also a lot easier for a lot of practical reasons. So, for example, I could travel out to places, and because I was just doing Yorkshire, it'd be a lot easier for me transport-wise. I'd also be able to explore my niche more than if I was just doing general British history. But also, I think, that might have been my motivation when I started, but as I developed over the years, I realised that actually I quite enjoyed doing Yorkshire history. I enjoyed learning about where I lived and the places I'd been to, and I also enjoyed being a northern historical voice, that I wasn't just making videos about the Tudors or World War II, that I was doing something which hadn't really been done before, at least in the way that I'd done it.
Would you ever think of like expanding to more northern or like just British history itself, or are you happy just staying where you are?
Interesting. I mean, because my brand has been built on Yorkshire history, so I think that's always going to be my focus, but I'm always looking for ways to cross-pollinate topics. So if I do a video, I'll think of a way in which I can draw a wider audience. So, for example, I did a video on a Yorkshire village which migrated to the American colonies in the 17th century. Now, it's about Yorkshire, but obviously it's going to appeal to Americans as well. And I've done lots of different videos on that same vein of taking something which might initially only have a small appeal of Yorkshire history, but actually expanding it to a wider audience. So I did a video on Celtic place names in Yorkshire, and I did a bit of a clickbait cheeky thing by tying it to the Welsh language. Welsh people normally wouldn't go searching for Yorkshire place names, but because that was there, they found it interesting, and as such, people who would never normally look at that did. So I think I just love all general types of history. Yorkshire is always going to be my thing, but I'm definitely always going to be interested in different parts of it.
I saw in an article that you went to the Ripley Castle. When was the last time you visited the Ripley Castle, and what are your favourite weapons there?
Yeah. I think that was quite an old interview a few years ago for a paper. It must have been years and years since I've been to Ripley Castle. I think I just said that because it was the first off the top of my head. But it was one of those places where when you're a kid and you see a room full of weapons and you're like, wow, this is amazing. I don't think there's any specific weapons I liked. I think I just like the general vibe of it because it's a big castle and it's got lots of different periods of history from medieval and Oliver Cromwell and Victorian stuff, and I think it was one of the places I most enjoyed visiting, but I liked all the weapons there.
I heard your content was likened to the children's show Horrible Histories. Did the show actually influence you, and if so, how? So I read Horrible Histories first. I think the books were more influential to me than the TV show. I don't think I consciously watched the show and thought I'm going to model it on that. It was sort of a thing I said afterwards because I realised that it was quite similar to it. But the approach of Horrible Histories was very unique in a way, and it was quite instrumental in me when I read the books, because here was someone making history accessible. It wasn't a dry academic textbook. It was making it fun and interesting, and I consumed them when I was younger. So I think I just took the philosophy of Terry Deary's books and then applied it to my videos. You've got all these really beautiful historical costumes. I was just wondering if you could talk about that. Like, how do you decide which one to wear based on your videos? Where do you source these kind of pieces? And how does your bank account feel afterwards?
So the good news actually is that I'm very self-sufficient, and so I buy very few of them. Most of the stuff, if not all, is stuff which I already have in my wardrobe. And if I need a special hat or something, I'll go order it. But the good news is that I'm not spending a lot. And I can't remember when it started, at which point in my videos, but obviously with my early ones, I was just wearing normal clothes. And then at a certain point, after I'd tried out a costume, I think my first one was a medieval nun, because I happened to have a nun outfit, as you do. I realised that people liked it, they responded to it quite well, and I felt quite good in it, and then it became part of my brand, and I really like it, to be honest. When I went to Hull to film a video on Amy Johnson, I was wearing this basically, and a flying cap, and people were looking at me, and they even said, "Oh, hi Amy," and it's just nice to walk around wearing weird clothes, and I think it makes things a little bit fun. It's very iconic in terms of my brand, so I enjoy it, and thankfully I don't spend a lot because I get most of it from charity shops.
So you said there that when you were dressed up and walking around Hull, people addressed you as Amy.
Yeah.
Has there been any like point where you've just been walking around either in costume or not, and people have actually like addressed you as Catherine? Have you had fans come up to you?
Yeah, a few times. I mean, I've been recognised a few times in public, but it's not very glamorous. So when I was in Leeds bus station, when I was in KFC, you know, I was in Saltaire doing a video on Titus Salt dressed as a Victorian, and someone thought I was a tour guide and wanted a picture with me. But yeah, I mean, I've been recognised a few times.
Right, yeah, definitely. And obviously, and then now looking towards like the future, obviously, how long have you been doing this for?
4 years, I think. The first video was 2018.
Right, so what do you see the future as? You've obviously recently hit 5,000 subscribers, which is a big milestone. Does your future lie in YouTube, or do you think it might lie elsewhere?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, YouTube's been a real springboard for my career recently, because all of the opportunities I've had has come through YouTube. And as for where I see myself in the future, I'm going to conquer the world. I've written a book which is coming out this summer, penciled in for July, about Yorkshire folklore, customs and traditions. And by the way, during the first section, when there was a picture about the reggae record shop, and the question was asked as to whether that's history, that's absolutely history, and that's something I wanted to make a point of in my book, because we tend to think of traditions as just something weird people did 200 years ago, when all the tradition is a meaningful activity passed down through the community. So I included the carnival in my traditions, and I think it's important that we remember that traditions are always adapting and evolving. But to get back to the point, I think my ultimate aim is to be on TV as a presenter. I love talking about history, and it's important, I think, to diversify the voices in history, because, you know, when you've got Lucy Worsley's 47th documentary, Michael Portillo's 275th Great British Railway Journey, all the people we hear talking about history are middle-class received pronunciation academics who've gone to Russell Group universities. Now, I don't have a history degree. I went to the University of Bradford, and I'm from a council estate in the north. That's not what we think of when we think of historians, but I've made it my mission to change that narrative and to show that northern working class voices are a part of history, and that's my mission.
Proper underdog story, love to see it. What's your book called?
A Yorkshire Year, 366 Days of Folklore, Customs and Traditions. It's not out yet, so don't Google it, because nothing will come up. But when it does, don't worry, you'll hear about it.
Yeah, we'll make sure to promote it wherever we can. So yeah, thank you, Catherine, for being here. Round of applause for. Now we move swiftly on to Darren, who is the creator of a YouTube channel AdventureMe. Do you know what video is going to be played?
I haven't a clue.
All right, so well,
I'm dreading it.
Let's just let's take a look at it right now.
Hello and welcome to AdventureMe, and today we're down here on the banks of the River Aire, right in the city centre of Leeds, and we've got the Leeds station just behind us over there. Now we're here to discuss a rumour or a myth that Leeds station is actually built on 2 levels. A lot of people are saying that there is another station right underneath Leeds station with platforms and shops and factories all underneath that structure there. Now, I'm also down here today to meet Richard Stead from BBC Radio Leeds Breakfast Show, and he asked me the question when we came down. Now, I'm not going to tell you what answer that I gave him, but what I am going to do is spend a few minutes talking about Leeds Station, and I'm going to let you decide for yourselves whether it's true or not, and I'll give you my conclusion at the end of this video. So let's start with a small bit of history about Leeds Station. So currently we're looking at Leeds Station, which is just behind over there. And as you can see here, we have the River Aire, which disappears underneath the station just in front there. But we'll talk about that very shortly. Right on this site here, where the old brick wall is what used to be the original Leeds Station, or as it was called then, Wellington Station. Now just behind us, over that way, is what was known as Leeds Central Station. And that was the original station for Leeds back in the 1850s. But what they did was just on the banks over here, they built a brand new station to compete with that one. But what they built was a temporary station. When I say temporary, it was probably a little bit lower than the one that's there now. Only a few years later, probably 5 or 6 years later, in the 1850s, they opened an actual proper Wellington station. So what they did was they built the stone walls and proper platforms going in, and also archways over the River Aire. So the original Wellington station would have been right where that car park building is there. And you can see the beautiful stonework there. Now what you're looking at here is the River Aire as it would have continued in a straight line, but now disappears down a weir down there under these multiple arches here. And it goes underneath the station and curves to the right to join the River Aire further down the other side, which I'll show you very shortly. So here's a better view from above. As you can see, the tunnels there with the river heading off underneath the station. There are rumours that the river, even after the station was built, continued ahead there into what was known as Kingsmill Goyt. So when the new Wellington station opened, which was in 1850, it was then joined alongside by another station just to the right of it over there, which was known as Leeds New Station. That station opened in 1869, and it was a joint enterprise by the London and North Western Railway and the North Eastern Railway companies. Now you can clearly see where the station passes from the old station to the new station. So at this point you would have had two stations right next to each other. You had Leeds New Station, which was the far side, and the Wellington Station, which was just behind there. Now that would have been rather pointless to have two stations right next to each other, although they do in London. But what they did was they combined them in 1938, and it became Leeds Central Station, which is what we have today. It's what you see right now. Now Leeds Central Station went through a massive refurbishment in the 1960s, and they remodeled a lot of the station, and they actually took away some of the old Wellington Station and moved it more over to the new one. Now the old Wellington Station concourse, which we just saw in that clip there when I walked through, still remains today, and it's still in use, but the actual platforms and everything at the back of it have now gone, and it's now a car park. Also back in 1938, when they combined both stations, they also built the famous Queen's Hotel that's still here today as well, as you can see behind me there. So that opened in the same year. So we're making our way now to what is known as Granary Wharf, or the Dark Arches as they call them around here. Now this is a road that runs underneath Leeds Station, and it runs from east to west, not through the middle like Neville Street does. So you can just see Neville Street ahead, which runs underneath the station. But there's a road just up there on the left that heads this way. Now back in the day, under these arches would have been open in the Victorian period, and apparently there was a lot of bad things happening underneath them arches back in the day. So knocking shops galore, I would have thought. So the public were no longer allowed to access these tunnels until in the 90s, when they reopened a section under here. So what we're going to do now is take a detour through there, and I'm going to show you what remains of Granary Wharf. And also when we're in there, you'll see the River Aire running underneath the station. Just making our way up through Granary Wharf, and as you can hear flowing water. Just going to show you up there. So these are the Dark Arches as they're known. So this is the River Aire coming from the other side of the station, and all the way through the middle here. So you've got the new station bricks, arches just here. And then in the distance, I don't know if you can see, but it changes to stone. That would have been the original Wellington station. So you can see how it was built in two sections. Just to our left here now, you've got the brand new entrance into Leeds station. Today, a lot of this has been used for parking now. So this is under the original arches, and there used to be a lot of restaurants and bars down here. They all seem to have moved outside now.
Is HelloFresh worth the price? Absolutely. In the beginning, I was doubtful too, until I realised I was actually saving.
So here you are, you can see the brand new Leeds station entrance there, which is built right on top of the River Aire. So those 5 arches that we saw at the start of the River Aire are condensed down into 3, well technically 3.5. This is where the River Aire exits the other side of the station. And like I say, the red brickwork there for the arches, that is the modern face that you're seeing. There is a second face further in, and then there's the original stone face, which would have been Wellington Station. And then it exits underneath this beautiful bridge and off that way. Just on the right there, you've got the Leeds-Liverpool Canal lock, which just exits around there, and then the river bends left. Just away from the station platforms here, you can see one of the original canal basins here. Now I'm going to show you a canal basin just up there, which is a bit more interesting than this one. But back in the day, these would have come in here and probably gone under the arches. There was various mills and complexes underneath these arches many years ago. Now there's a nice lock gate there, and it's just a lovely basin to moor up. Now stood on the banks of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal in Granary Wharf, and we're heading just round the corner here on this beautiful day into what is known, or was known, as Monk's Basin. Now this one is a little different to the other one, and I'll explain why when we get round there. So here we are at Monk's Basin. So this basin would have extended through those arches there that you can see that are bricked up now, all the way through, and as it got to the other side where the old Wellington station was, it narrowed down and there was a lock underneath Wellington station. So what I'm going to do now is just take you round the other side of the station and show you, if I can, where it exits on the other side and joins the River Aire. So we've just made our way back round to the banks of the River Aire on the other side of the old Wellington station here. If you just look in them trees there, I don't know how clear it's going to be with it being so hazy today, but there is the tunnel exit for the canal basin right there. I'm going to try zoom in for you, but if not, I'm going to put a picture on the screen now so you can see that. That's where the basin would have gone underneath the station, and when it met the old Wellington Street station, which is here, it would have then entered a lock and gone up this lock to bring it up to river level, which is right here. So the lock would have been inside that tunnel right there. And again, I'm going to show you another picture now, which was taken inside there. And as you can see, the lock has been filled in now. Now that lock was known as Monk Pit Lock. And that was the Monk Pit Basin just down there. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you a quick story about a fire that happened in 1892. Now under those 4 brick arches that I showed you, where the canal went underneath the Leeds New Station site, back in 1892, there used to be a mill under there that made soap, and it burst into flames. They had a fire, and it was underneath the Wellington Station site, and it caused the platforms above the Wellington Station to collapse down. But also because the ground gave way, it caused the trains to slope down into the Hull, and all the trains went down and burnt underground as well. Now I'm told if you would go under there now where the original canal tunnel is, you can still see the scorch marks on the roof and the soot marks, because it was right underneath where the lock was. There was a basin underneath there, and that's where the mill would have been. So like I said, I brought Richard Stead from BBC Radio Leeds down here this morning, and he asked me the question. He said, apparently there was a station underneath Leeds Station with platforms and everything. Is that true? And my answer to Richard was, I don't think it is. I don't think it is true. And that's my conclusion for today's video. So we've taken a look around the whole site under the arches of the station. And my conclusion is that no station existed underneath the current one. But underneath these arches, you had mills and factories and canal basins and locks and a small city, really. So that's maybe what they're confusing it with. Maybe they're thinking that all those things meant that there was a station underneath, but there wasn't. All it was the underground void underneath the station that was built over the river. And all the businesses that flourished inside, just like today, as you can see behind me. Lots of bars, restaurants and businesses. But is it a city underneath the station? Probably not. Definitely no station underneath there, as far as I'm aware. Now I want to know what you guys think. Did it have a station underneath? Is there anything else that I've missed in this video that you'd like to tell me about? If so, please put it down in the comments below. But I hope you enjoyed our little look there at Leeds Station and the original station as well. But thank you very much for joining me here. If you've enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and any comments down below. But from me, I'll see you very soon. Bye.
So Darren, my first question to you is, so we were talking downstairs earlier. You said you were pretty self-critical of your work. Is that a video that you're proud of?
No. Very much like Catherine, I was a bit wet behind the ears then. So just watching that, then I'm picking everything as I'm watching it. I'm thinking I could have done that better. I could have put the text in a different color. I could have done this. I could have shortened that. You know, you get very critical when you want to be perfect, don't you? So, yeah, I'm very critical of my own work.
That does show how far you've come then, because, correct me if I'm wrong, you started your YouTube channel in January 2020.
Yeah,
so
just before lockdown.
So yeah, you've only been going for two and a bit years.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, what did you expect it to be like? Because obviously, a few people when they start YouTube, they do it from a younger age. And they kind of maybe start as a hobby and it builds up potentially into something massive. What did you expect it to be for you?
It's a difficult one because I kind of started it as a bit of fun, as a hobby. I didn't have any intentions. I didn't have any projections in my head or any idea what were going to happen. I just thought, I'm going to make videos about things I like doing. And if people watch them, great. If they don't, then I've not lost anything. And that's kind of how I set about doing it. But then as I was going on, I realized that people actually were interested in what I was doing. And I was getting a lot of compliments on how I clarified things and how I investigated things. And I thought, maybe I found a niche here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's something that not everybody else is doing. And I've kind of found my own path now. And I've just kind of got on with it. And the more and more people keep joining in. So I'm just going to keep going and enjoying it, really.
Did you have any past experiences on YouTube? Did you kind of have a bit of a gist on what might happen, how algorithms worked or something like that?
No, I mean I was a fan of other people. I used to watch other history channels anyway. Already, I was a big fan of a couple from Manchester and even American ones, but I never. Probably the only preconceptions I had were probably what they had done. So I knew what to expect from what they'd done and how the story that they told. But no, I'd never ever done YouTube videos or anything like that. I literally set up a channel and thought, I'm just gonna have a go at it. And I was inspired by other people. So a lot of the videos that I did early on were based on what they did, and I kind of just tried to put my own stamp on it and move on. Really, no preconceptions of it.
Have you done videos or met any of these people that inspired you?
I have actually, yeah. So literally, I was a big fan of a guy called Martin Zero in Manchester. He was probably my biggest sort of idol at the time on the history side, because he wasn't versed in history, and a bit like what Catherine was saying, he wasn't an academic. He wasn't a historian. He was just some bloke who had a camera with him and thought, I know a bit about that, and I'm going to talk about it. And he was good on a camera. He was good at talking. And his videos are so quirky, but they're interesting, and that's what I liked. And I just watched it, and I remember thinking at the time, this is amazing. I'd love to do this. I could probably do this. But nobody's done Yorkshire, or nobody's doing this area. Nobody's done this. Nobody's done... And I started thinking of ideas in my head and thinking, I could do that. And I could, sort of make videos on things I like. So that's kind of where I went with it.
When that video happened, like, did you reach out to him, or how did that?
Yeah, so I was a big fan of Martin, and I think I had 500 subscribers when I first. This is a few months later, and I thought I'm going to message him and see if he wants to do what they call on YouTube a collab, which is basically what YouTube call it when they want you to work with other YouTubers to basically promote each other's channels, although the bigger one's technically helping the smaller one out. So I thought, I'm going to message him. I've got nothing to lose, see if he wants to do it. But then I thought, well, I need to come up with an idea of something I proposed to him. I don't want to just say, shall we do a video? I want to say, do you want to do this? So I came up with a really good idea. And in fact, I got 6 ideas, I think. And I messaged Martin. I said, look, I've got 6 ideas. I'd love to do a video with you in Yorkshire. You've never been over to Yorkshire. Let's do one of these. And he said, well, I'd like to do all of them. I said, well, come over for a day and we'll do all of them then. So I literally showed him around 6 places, but he were utterly gobsmacked with the stuff I was showing him, and I knew what the kind of thing he liked. So that's kind of how I came about, really. I wasn't planning. I actually thought he'd ignore me. I honestly thought he's going to say, I haven't got time for that or whatever, but he was really interested. And at the time, I think he was, because it was the start of lockdown, it was just after lockdown, actually. I think he was desperate for content, and he was struggling to work out what to do next. So when I proposed some ideas to him, he thought, you know what, I'm going to go over to Yorkshire and have a go. His followers liked it and mine did.
Yeah, so you said that COVID obviously hit like 2 months after you started. How did that impact you? Did you feel like you were having, you had a lot of ideas, you'd got started pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden you've hit a brick wall, this pandemic's come along?
Yeah, I was quite lucky because I'd filmed, I think I'd done one series to start the channel, and that was the East West Yorkshire Union Railway, which was local to me. And I'd done 10 videos, and I'd already pre-filmed them. And I'd already had them in the bag. So I thought, this lockdown's only going to be a couple of weeks. I've got a few videos to cover that. Because back then I was doing 2 a week. I started, I should have done 1 a week, but I didn't. I started with 2 a week, getting excited. And I was throwing these videos out, and as it was going on and on and on, we got to April and then May, I'm thinking, I'm going to run out of videos soon. So I started spreading them a bit thinner and stretching them out. And then I thought, what am I going to do? Because we weren't allowed out. And I thought, well, I need to fill these gaps. So then I had to get more creative. Bearing in mind, I've only been going a couple of months, so I'm still wet behind the ears. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to do a live stream. I'm going to have to sit in the house and talk about something. Because I wanted to make sure that there was content there to keep people engaged. Otherwise, you disappear. You know what I mean? If you disappear for a month, people forget about you. So I kind of felt the pressure straight away. And as it happened, not long after that, the lockdown thing was released, and I was able to go out and film more videos. So I thought, I'm going to get out. And I literally researched about 10 videos, and I went out and filmed as many as I could per day, just in case we got locked down again, and we did. I was quite fortunate, but at the same time, it was a bit of a bad timing for me to start a channel.
Yeah, definitely. But do you feel like it was kind of helpful for you to kind of get an insight on how everything works in YouTube almost?
Yeah, because at the same time, I normally do my full-time job. When I first started the channel, I was doing this on a weekend as a side thing, but because we had lockdown, I had all the time in the world. And it meant I could sit there, be a bit more creative, do more research. I could make the videos better. So they probably ended up being better than what they would have been had I rushed them a little bit if I was working. So yeah, it taught me how things worked. I researched things more. I remember watching a few YouTube videos on how to improve your algorithm and all that sort of stuff. I mean, none of it works, but you do watch them and try anyway. But yeah, it helped. I think had I have been busier, I might have been a bit further behind now than what I am now. So it helped.
So now, obviously, you've grown massively since you first, since 2 years ago. Obviously, I'm assuming back then it was just you recording, editing, and producing everything, or did you actually have people around helping you then?
Just me.
Now is it different, or is it still just you?
Still just me.
Oh wow! So like, how?
I'm kind of at that point where I'm a perfectionist, but I like to do my own thing on everything. So I like the edit to go how I want it to go. I like the content to be what I make it, and I want to say what I want to say. So I'm hands-on from the start to the end, but at the same time, the people around me are not interested in it at all. So for me to say to friends or, could you help me with this? Could you? They're just not interested. They're not into history. I make them watch the videos. I force them to sit there and watch them, and it's that kind of thing. But I've not come from that sort of background. To me, it was all in my head, and that was it. Yeah.
So like, how do you now balance what you do on YouTube now with your job?
Well, for 2 years I didn't have to because we were locked down, and my job, I don't know if you know, but I was in a band, a singer. So my job just ended for 2 years. So I had absolutely nothing to do. So the YouTube thing, I was able to put 100% in all the time until this year when the work started coming back in. So I've kind of learned to juggle it now. It's getting to the point where I'm not 100% back to where we were before lockdown. So I've not had to sort of work alongside doing both jobs, but it's working okay at the minute. But it gets to the point, hopefully, eventually, where I'll be able to get rid of that job and do the YouTube thing full time. So it's kind of hard juggling it, but I'll get there.
And obviously, it's obviously a pretty touchy subject. Everybody wants to know like how successful can you be like money wise on YouTube. But obviously, I've been looking at your website before playing research for this, and you have like a merchandise sale. So obviously, you did tell me how like all that works downstairs. But how does that actually like work? And do you like have people? Well, obviously, you said you don't have people to actually like edit your videos and help you out with stuff like that. Do you have people to help out with this?
No. Everything I do is basically my own doing. The merchandise thing that wasn't my choosing. I remember it in my head at one point thinking, because all YouTube channels, eventually they do merchandise. And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that. That's not my thing. Who's going to want to buy a T-shirt with my blooming channel on it? And who's going to want this? But people were asking all the time, message after message, when are you doing merch? When are you doing merch? When are you doing merch? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. If they buy it, great. If they don't, they don't. So, because at the time, like I said, the job was non-existent. So I needed every penny I could get at the time. And I thought, I'm going to try it. It might work. It might not. And there is companies out there, I don't know if you know how merch works, but you don't have to do it yourself. So there's companies out there that will take the orders, they'll print it, and they'll send it themselves. So they take, obviously, a massive chunk of that, but you don't have to do anything. All you do is design it and put it on there, and then advertise it to your customers. And if they want to buy one, they're basically dealing with that company. Now, when they start missing deliveries and things, they all come to you, obviously. Why is it not? I know nothing about it. But basically, it's there if they want it. It doesn't cost me anything. If they don't want it, they don't want it. I've just got to make sure that the designs that are on there are interesting enough for people to want to buy. And it started off pretty well, to be honest. Straight away, people were buying things, and I'm just shaking my head thinking, why would you want a T-shirt with my name on it? Why would you want a T-shirt with that logo on it? But they do, and people love it, and they buy it. And yeah, it's a nice little side income other than the channel income as well. So it's brilliant. I mean, it's peanuts over the years, but it's why not?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously it all adds up in the end, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And it allows you to kind of experiment with some fun stuff. I think I remember seeing like a face mask with like a bread roll on it or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking I wanted to do, somebody said, why don't you do a Yorkshire line? So I'm thinking of phrases for Yorkshire, and I'm thinking A up, the usual ones, Dark Pit and all that, things that are relevant to my channel. So I did a couple of slogan T-shirts, and then somebody said, what about tea cake? obviously, well, I'm from Bradford, so to me, it was a tea cake, not a bap or a roll or a barm cake. And I thought, yeah, it's one of them funny things that people laugh at. So I've got a picture of a tea cake or a barm cake, whatever you want to call it, stuck it on a T-shirt and stick tea cake above it. God, people bought it in the droves, honestly. People were going, oh, I want that T-shirt. They were buying it, and I'm thinking, are you crazy? But it's just what goes viral. It's, you know, it appeals to people's likes and things like that.
Yeah, and obviously, and then finally, like I asked Catherine, what do you think the future is for you? You know, obviously, you've recently hit 30,000 subscribers on your channel, which is mental to say you've only been doing it for 2 years. Do you think that you can maybe grow it and, you know, hit like 100,000? You know, we were talking downstairs, you get like a plaque for that.
Yeah, well, I suppose, like I said downstairs, the ultimate ambition for any YouTuber that's starting out is the first milestone, and you'll probably agree with this, Catherine, 100,000, isn't it? Because you get a nice shiny plaque from YouTube. There's no really other incentive behind it apart from it's that sort of thing that you focus on. I mean, things like millions are way off, so you don't even think about that. But to be honest, I've tried not, because I got a piece of advice when I started the channel off another YouTuber, and they said to me, don't get too hung up on figures and don't get hung up on popularity, because the minute you do that, you'll become obsessed with it and it'll ruin you. And I thought, it's great advice. 2 months later, I'm checking my phone every 5 seconds. Oh, it's gone up 1 subscriber, telling everybody, I'm reading every comment, and I'm thinking, I started to do it. I started to go down that hole of checking it all the time. And I was going, oh, why has he got so many views for this video? And I haven't got so... You start chasing it. And I had to stop myself. I literally had to put the phone away and say, stop doing that. Because you do get ate up by it. I don't know if you did the same, Catherine, but you sort of become obsessed with it. And I've had to push it away and stop focusing on the numbers now. So when I get to a milestone, it's actually people that remind me sometimes. They'll go, oh, you've hit 20,000. And I'm like, oh, amazing, thanks. And I'm like, oh, God, yeah. I try not to look because it can get you obsessed with it and you can go down a hole, basically.
Yeah, and then obviously, and then one final question to wrap it up, which goes to both of you. Do you get like overwhelmed with the fact that thousands of people are watching your videos that you just post to YouTube, but especially given that obviously you start from nothing really, and you know you think I do YouTube for, you know, I'm not as big as these two here, but if I get like 30 views, I'm like, that's mental, because like 30 people have taken their time to actually watch what I've put out.
But related to the last question with the getting obsessed with figures, the higher you get, the more disappointed you get when you get lower figures. So you when you first start, you get 10 viewers, you're like, oh wow, I've got 10 people watching this video, it's amazing. When you get to another level, it's 1,000, and you expect that every time. So the goalpost changes every time you get higher. And if it dips below a certain level, now if I get 5,000 views on a video, I'm like, oh, that's a flop. It's not done great.
That's exactly the high wears off. I mean, I've got a screenshot of when I had 500 subscribers, and I got about 100 views in 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And now, if I don't get sort of 1,000 views in a few days, I'm like, oh. And I think, hang on, I used to dream of getting 1,000 views in a few days.
You take it personally, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's a lesson for any creatives is about being grateful for the things you have. Because what makes me laugh is I remember when I first got in the Yorkshire Post, I was like, right, I've made it now. And then because I was part of this YouTube campaign, I was on billboards and I got put on the Metro and the Guardian. I was like, oh, well, that's normal now. And I'm like, what's the next thing? And it's like you forget to realise it.
You do. You take it for granted.
And also, it's sod's law that your worst video is going to be the one with most views. So my most viewed video is, I hate it. It's a really old one where I went to Kirkstall Abbey, and it's not got as many views as yours, but it's my most viewed video. And it's really annoying because why are they watching that one when they're not watching my new ones?
That's exactly true. My worst video is my biggest video on the channel, and it was one I did after 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It was just before lockdown, and I started panicking, and I thought I need to go out and make content. So I've not researched it as good as I normally would. I went to the Emily Moore Mast and I made a video on that, and I just basically told what I knew and did a quick video on that, and it went viral. But a year later, and now I'm cringing watching it. I'm thinking, God, I can't say it. I'm stuttering, I'm stumbling, I've not researched it properly. But it's always the way that your worst video becomes more popular.
Well, thank you too. It's been great to pick your brains just throughout the whole night before and live on air, especially as a young person who kind of has grown up through YouTube. And, you know, it's always nice, you know, you always wonder, you know, how does it work? And it's great to actually have two people who kind of live in that world almost and are almost experts in how it works. So thank you, Darren and Catherine, again for joining me. And that, I think, concludes this evening's live broadcast here on East Leeds FM here in the chapel in Studio 3 in our big radio theatre. I've definitely had it's been very fascinating for me. So yeah, thank you once again to Darren, Catherine and Peter. Thanks to Peter Spafford for leading the first part. Thanks to everyone being in this in our live audience. Big shout outs to everyone watching on YouTube and everyone listening on the East Leeds FM website. Make sure that you are subscribing if you're on YouTube to AdventureMe and Yorkshire's Hidden History. And yeah, we will see you guys next week or whenever we do a live show here, and hopefully maybe we can get these two guys back to talk again about their YouTube, because I'm going to be honest, we've only really scratched the surface. At least I have, on what I can ask these guys. So yeah, thank you guys, and we will see you guys later.
Music.
Reviews.
Chat.
Poems.
Comedy.
Writing.
Interviews.
ELFM, it's radio, but so much more.